Thank you for joining us. Today we are joined by Jonathan Levy, who is a trustee at the Dyspraxia Foundation. Jonathan has the neurological condition dyspraxia, which can make even the most basic of everyday tasks particularly challenging. The Jewish 26-year-old has stated that his faith has kept him strong over the years and even helped him smash past some of the barriers in place. Jonathan, can you just outline to viewers what the condition of dyspraxia is and how it has affected you?
Dyspraxia is a neurological condition thought to affect between 5 to 10% of the population, particularly boys. It can have physical, emotional and also verbal symptoms. Essentially it's a developmental coordination disorder, so it doesn't mean people can't achieve things, but as the name developmental coordination disorder implies, it can be a delay sometimes. So many people with dyspraxia, like myself, I don't think I've ever come first to anything in life, but often they get there in the end. But it is a disability, so often extra support is needed, but people can get there, and that's a firm belief of mine. As I've already said, it's a neurological condition. Many, say, day-to-day examples, traits of it can be, say, at childhood. It can be things such as difficulty, maybe throwing, catching a ball, learning to tie shoelaces. Maybe in adolescence, it can be things like personal grooming, getting a job, learning to cook, learning to drive. In many cases, I can't drive. That would be particularly challenging for me because of the physical symptoms, that kind of thing. And as I say, although dyspraxia isn't curable, many of the challenges faced by people with dyspraxia, they can be overcome, often with a lot of hard work, sheer determination, that kind of thing. Often a particular passion of mine in terms of highlighting, raising awareness of dyspraxia is getting a job for anyone with disability can be particularly challenging, and statistics unfortunately show that disabled people are very more likely to be out of work than in work. Getting a job can be very difficult, but actually keeping a job can be very difficult too. So making things work for you, it's a particular passion of mine, making it work for you, but also raising awareness, but talking about it in a positive way, whilst recognising and being honest about the challenges that can be faced. The Dyspraxia Foundation itself is a charity, a registered charity. It's a membership-led organisation, so we do support our service users in a range of ways, from providing a telephone helpline, which many people are constantly getting in touch with by telephone, email. A real key trait of dyspraxia, many people actually struggle to get a diagnosis. Getting a diagnosis in life can be really difficult. So many people come to us often as a real last resort, wanting advice on how to get a diagnosis, how, say, to get the right support in school, going through school, education, as already mentioned, getting a job, keeping that job, that kind of thing. But again, we're a really positive, small, but very successful, constantly growing organisation who really do put our beneficiaries, our members, parents, carers, people with a condition like myself, at the heart of what we do. We also run many conferences, workshops, and it really is about a can-do culture, showing people that you really can achieve your goals. It just might take you that bit longer.
Yeah, and I mean, what does your role at the Dyspraxia Foundation actually entail, your role as a trustee?
So my role as a trustee is a voluntary role, first of all, so it's separate to my day-to-day job, but it's essentially, being a trustee is essentially overseeing governance of organisations, so it's setting and monitoring, tracking a business plan, your core objectives, your mission statement, your goals, your financial goals, your goals with beneficiaries and the people you're serving, applying for funding, finances, organising events to an extent, but more at a governance level, so not necessarily doing the everyday operational tasks, but certainly being involved in them and supporting them. And really, from what I see, particularly as someone who's on that board who has dyspraxia, being a real advocate, a real ambassador for the cause is really important for me, because truthfully, I would never possibly even have heard of Dyspraxia Foundation if I hadn't been on my own journey with the condition myself. My own engagement with the Dyspraxia Foundation came about 6 years ago in 2011. I wrote a newspaper feature for my local newspaper, Warrington Guardian, and this feature, it was during Dyspraxia Awareness Week, which is our annual campaign highlighting the condition. It was about my life, my career to date, growing up with a condition, and it received a response far greater than I ever expected. This piece won an award a few months later. I then was offered about a year later to become a trustee. I've been on TV since then. I did some public speaking. Really, one thing has led to another. I have been on, as cliche as it can sound, I have been on a fantastic journey with the Dyspraxia Foundation, but also, even at the age of 26 now, I'm still continually learning new things about how my condition affects me. So I'm grateful to benefit from the support of the Dyspraxia Foundation myself, but also play my part as a credible trustee in setting the objectives, our mission statement and our future as we move forward.
Yeah. And can I ask, when were you actually diagnosed with dyspraxia as well, Jonathan?
So I was diagnosed with dyspraxia at a young age, maybe about 4 or 5, which I actually, as I look back, I think I'm very fortunate, because as I already mentioned, many people with dyspraxia really struggle to get a diagnosis. It can be particularly difficult, and especially if you go into adulthood, just thinking, being told you're different, or worse, far greater, unfortunately in many cases, worse than that. So getting a diagnosis meant that I was legally entitled to support, so I had a lot of support, extra one-to-one support, that kind of thing in school. Outside of school I had physiotherapy, occupational therapy, speech and language therapy, and as I look back I realised, although I, like many people, was at times quite resistant to all this support, being singled out in a way at school, it was really very beneficial for me, particularly in the physical side. I still have physical difficulties, but many physical strengths, strengthening, building muscles, that kind of thing, speech and language for me. So I'm particularly proud of the fact that nowadays I do lots of things like public speaking, I've been involved in politics, I've done lots of canvassing, fundraising, that kind of thing. I've worked in radio, and as I look back, I think it's a real blessing that I got speech and language support, because many people like myself never get to achieve or never believe they can achieve these things, but having got the support I've been able to achieve many things to date, and I'm really grateful for that.
And clearly you've not let the condition get in the way of your ambitions. How would you say that your Jewish faith has kept you strong, and how have you actually managed to get past some of those barriers that have been in place?
Well, I think having a faith in general can be a really powerful, really beneficial thing. Prayer for me is really important, so I make a point of praying several times a day, and I don't necessarily set aside times or places where I'm going to do it. I often do it in the spur of the moment when I really feel like it, and often it's just thanking God for the things He's doing for me in my life, as well as often asking for things, asking for prayer, asking for support. So particularly on the rare occasions when I feel down, when I might feel anxious, worried, concerned about things, I ask God to maybe not necessarily give me what I want, but show me that my path will be all right, make me feel calmer, that kind of thing. And my faith for me really has helped. I grew up in a family with a strong faith, and the importance of prayer was given to me at a young age, and that's been really beneficial for me. And I think with my disability as well, knowing that I have a God who really believes in me, loves me, telling me everything is all right, and calm me down, can be really beneficial. I'm really thankful for that. I think it really has helped to make me stronger in that respect.
Yeah, and I mean, by looking at society, it's still apparent that there is still an ignorance when it comes to the disability. I mean, do you agree with that? And if so, what do you think actually needs to be done to make progress in that specific area?
Well, unfortunately, there is definitely a lot of stigma attached, a lot of ignorance, often unintended ignorance to do with disability, not just disability, but it's race, religion, obviously in my case, disability. And I think the word disability in itself, many people understandably have a perception of what it is. They might think of, say, someone with perhaps more seemingly obvious features. They might think of someone with a wheelchair, a walking stick, but actually one of the challenges of raising awareness of conditions like dyspraxia, I believe, is the fact that it's a largely hidden condition. So therefore, even getting across, making people believe and accept that not all disabilities are that obvious, that it is a recognised disability, I think can be a real challenge in itself. Also getting people to believe that just because I have a disability doesn't mean I'm not the same as you, in terms of I can't go to the same places socially, I can't have the same jobs, that kind of thing. I'm very career driven, and I have real aspirations to lead an organisation and the charity sector one day. And unfortunately, a disappointment of mine is, in society as a whole, there aren't many openly disabled leaders, people who are, say, willing to speak out, talk about their journey. I myself have told people about my aspirations one day, and sometimes, through no malicious intent, the immediate thing that comes out, that will be very difficult for someone like you. So I think there's a real lack of openly disabled role models, people to aspire to, because often the path for people with disability, or even a difference, is particularly challenging. Getting there is particularly challenging. And I think, in terms of breaking the cycle of ignorance, I think one thing that's really important with race, religion, disability is actually getting different people to talk, have those difficult conversations. Unfortunately, we see in the news sometimes sometimes society is too segregated. Bringing communities together is really important. It can make a real fundamental difference in understanding each other, because I believe at the heart of things, despite our differences, we actually, faith, religion aside, have more in common than we do against.
Yeah. Thanks for that, Jonathan. That's been very, very informative and very insightful. That is all for today, but we thank you all for watching.